ever since Captain America: The First Avenger came out, fans were wondering if and when we'd see the villainous Red Skull return to the MCU. Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame answered that question, but is there a place for the Red Skull to return to the narrative come Phase 4?
Measure your next words very carefully, because you may not know of what you speak.
That's cool.
Let's take a look. The Red Skull is a beloved comic book villain and one of the better antagonists in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Born Johann Schmidt, he was the former big boss at HYDRA. Red Skull has been a longtime adversary to Captain America, having first appeared in the 7th issue of the Cap's comic all the way back in 1941. Co-created by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, the villain would become Cap's arch nemesis and would go on to become one of the most iconic comic book supervillains of all time. HYDRA acted as the Special Weapons Division for the German Army in the 1940s and was tasked with finding scientific solutions to help the Reich win the war by any means necessary. One of those missions was to create an army of enhanced soldiers to help HYDRA take over the world. But it was the Americans who had the key to this serum, and this set Red Skull and his minions on a mission on American soil. After failing to obtain a sample of the super soldier serum that Dr. Erskine had worked on in the States during the events of the First Avenger, Schmidt began an attempt to replicate the serum based on fragments of notes and research. The result left Schmidt deformed, his face morphing into a skull-like visage with a red taint, hence his moniker. But he did gain superior strength, proving the serum was more or less successful. On top of this, the Red Skull also had in his possession the Tesseract, which he likely had no clue was the Space Stone. Regardless, the Tesseract would prove invaluable to the Red Skull in his project and quest for dominance. From there, Schmidt would attempt to destroy the United States, but was stopped by Captain America. Instead of dying or being brought to justice, however, Red Skull entered a wormhole and vanished from sight until the events of Infinity War. In that movie, we learned that the Red Skull was transported to the planet of Vormir and would become a guardian of sorts to the Soul Stone. As he was transported to the planet alone, he had no bargaining chip to attempt to claim the stone himself, and so was forced to advise would-be stone collectors on the rules of the Soul Stone.
Guiding others to a treasure I cannot possess.
Now that the Infinity Saga is closed, there's no need for the Red Skull, right? All the stones were returned, and he's left guarding the Soul Stone once more.
If only it were that easy.
While this is true, it's not a guarantee. Let's hear it from the Skull's mouth himself. While Hugo Weaving may have played the villain in the First Avenger, he did not return to play the Red Skull in Infinity War and Endgame. Weaving cited that Marvel was impossible to work with, despite having a lot of fun playing the Red Skull in the movie. But the renegotiating of the contracts and the uncertain role of Red Skull in the future deterred Weaving from returning. Instead, The Walking Dead's Ross Marquand did a pretty spot-on interpretation of Weaving's portrayal of the Red Skull. The actor sat down in an interview with Nerd for Life and talked about how the Red Skull could factor into Phase 4 and beyond. Of course, this is merely him talking about what-ifs and not any official confirmation from Marvel, but the ideas do seem pretty solid and plausible. Marquand stated in his interview that he was told from the Russo Brothers that the moment Hawkeye obtains the Soul Stone, the Red Skull was essentially free from his many decades of servitude on Vormir. Not only that, but with the advent of time travel and Doctor Strange's upcoming film The Multiverse of Madness, we're beginning to see that there are other realities at play in the MCU. The fact that the Red Skull is free from servitude to the Soul Stone was reconfirmed by the Russos on Twitter. Marquand believes that as soon as the Red Skull became free, either when Thanos claimed the stone or Hawkeye, that he would begin planning his revenge. He's been cooped up on an alien planet for over 70 years and is likely pretty vexed that the universe put him next to an Infinity Stone without any means of claiming it. So, once he's no longer bound to the stone, he's not exactly going to grab a cup of tea and chill out. This freedom also explains why Captain America was able to restore the Soul Stone without any conflict, as Red Skull was not there to greet him on Vormir. It's also worth mentioning that in the timeline where the decimation happened, Thanos also destroyed all all the stones, further ensuring that the Red Skull has no obligation to the Soul Stone anymore. That would suggest that the Red Skull is in fact not at his former post and may have even found a way to leave the planet. Marquand thinks that the Red Skull would be determined to somehow get to Earth at this point. He's had more than enough time to try and formulate a plan, and that isolation may have driven him to become highly determined despite his calm demeanor on Vormir. So with Marquand revealing that the Red Skull is essentially free per the guidance of the Russo brothers, the gates are open to talk about where things may go next. Red Skull's original plan during the Second World War was essentially designed to allow him to control the world. In order to do this, he needed the power of the Tesseract. So Red Skull's primary objective will be to locate the Space Stone once more. In the comics, Thanos isn't the only character who obtains the Infinity Stones, and we can safely assume that the stones will continue to play a role in the MCU going forward. So if Red Skull is to be a major villain yet again, you can bet he'll be wanting at least one of the stones, if not all of them. Now, things get all sorts of bizarre going forward in the MCU due to the two timelines that exist, plus the promise of a multiverse. So for the sake of convenience, this Red Skull will exist in the Thanos destroying the stones timeline, as there is zero obligation to the stones there. This means that future writers have the potential to use time travel yet again and alternate realities when incorporating the Red Skull. With Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness on the horizon, we can expect things to get real weird now. So the Red Skull will have come to the primary timeline either by traveling the multiverse or using time travel. The main question is, how is he gonna get off of Vormir? Because he can't exactly exact his revenge from another planet. Skull will need some sort of way off the planet. Whether that is hitchhiking a ride or being instantly transported back to Earth is unclear, but the destination remains the same regardless. The Russo brothers, in that tweet we mentioned earlier, also mentioned that the Red Skull is free to pursue an Infinity Stone. So the Russos are very aware that Schmidt would want at least one stone, likely the Tesseract. So where is the Tesseract? Thanks to the time heist, Captain America brought the Space Stone back to the 1970s. Assuming it stayed at the base, the Red Skull will have to break into the base and claim the stone for himself. He can't do this on his own, however, and HYDRA no longer exist on Earth as far as we know, so the Red Skull will likely need reinforcements. The Red Skull may be intelligent and strong like Captain America, but he still can't take on a whole base on his own. But maybe he doesn't have to. As seen in the first movie, Red Skull is a master of disguise and can use masks. Perhaps he's infiltrated the US government to access the Infinity Stone it controls. This brings us a very real possibility. What if Red Skull is on Earth during the events of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier? We talked about the show at length before on the channel, but one theory could be that the Red Skull is working behind the scenes here. In one of the comic runs, it was Red Skull who activated John D. Walker, the man who becomes US Agent. That character is confirmed to be on the show, so maybe he's a puppet of the Red Skull? With the introduction of the Red Skull to the narrative fold of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this may explain why Zemo may be working with his former enemies as potentially teased in the Super Bowl teaser. In it, we see Bucky facing off against his former captor. What this means is currently unknown, but the two burying the hatchet to overcome a greater foe may be one of the plot points of the upcoming series. In the comics, and likely the show, US Agent acquired his own version of the Super Soldier Serum on the black market. Perhaps for the show, the serum isn't obtained from a market, but from the Red Skull himself. Schmidt is one of the two people alive who knows how to build a variation of the Super Soldier Serum. Rogers was only the recipient of the serum and has no knowledge of the science behind it. Schmidt, on the other hand, worked out the science of the serum itself. It was not a total success for him or Bruce Banner, obviously, but out of all the people alive, Red Skull is essentially one of the few authorities on the matter. What's worse, though, is the Red Skull will use his knowledge and his possible pawn, US Agent, to manipulate the situation. With a pawn working against two members connected to the Avengers, Red Skull has begun to potentially play his long game. If he can get the Space Stone from the US government while also working against Sam and his new ally Bucky, then perhaps the Red Skull can begin to take on the Avengers. Red Skull, due to failing at the hands of Steve Rogers in 1945 and spending decades in exile, hates Captain America. Despite despite his cool and calm demeanor on Vormir, we would imagine he would want to destroy everything that the shield represents upon his return to Earth. Part of his plan to do that will likely include his puppet, US Agent. In the comics, US Agent acts as a rogue Captain America for some time, operating as his exact polar opposite morally. It's quite possible that since Red Skull gains nothing by beating up an old man who is out of the fight now, he has no choice but to destroy what he represents. This, of course, will set him on a crash course with the new Captain America, Sam Wilson. So that's one way that the Red Skull could possibly return in Phase 4 and why he'd want to return. What will be awesome if it turns out Red Skull is in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we'll be seeing the primary villains from the two Cap films in the same narrative, but perhaps with their own agendas as opposed to a straightforward alliance. The question now remains is, will true form Red Skull have that sweet cloak he had in Infinity War and Endgame? That's how the Red Skull might come into play for Phase 4 and beyond in the MCU. What do you think? Will Ross Marquand return as the fan-favorite villain? Let us know what you think in the comments section below. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in your playlist every day. Thanks for watching.